Hello, my name is Seth, and this is a story about my life, or about how something that happened in my life changed me completely. You see, I'm a deaf storyteller. I don't hear unless I've got my hearing aids. I have two hearing aids that help me hear. And in this ear, they're very good and helpful. In this ear, it's a bit difficult to hear anything. But how did I become deaf? Well, it happened that a long time ago I was in a place where a bomb went off. Many people were killed, but I wasn't. I lost my hearing, but I survived. And I've got these hearing aids that help me to hear. And from that moment, when I got used to being deaf and used to having been in a horrible time and place where war had happened, I decided to try and find out why it is that people fight, why it is that people disagree and start fighting, start wars. And is there any way in which people can change their minds and maybe find ways, instead of making war, of making peace? And as a storyteller, I listened to lots of stories, and I listened to one that affected me a lot. And I'd like to tell you this story. A long time ago, high up in the mountains, there was a village, and the two sides of the village were quite different. And running right through that village, there was a little road. Not even a road, it was a path, a little track, a little path. And the people in the village, who were very happy and very contented, they didn't know where the path went to, and they didn't know where the path came from. They were happy just being together. Now, one side of the village was continually in the shade because there was a tall ridge of mountains. They didn't have any sun at all, but what they did have was water. Now, the other side of the village, the sun shone all day over the mountains onto their side of the village. And so all day they had the sun, but they had no water. So the two sides of the village needed to grow food. And for food, of course, as well as soil to plant your plants, you need sun and you need water. And so the two sides of the village cooperated. These people became very good at making pipes and making pumps to pump all the water across to this side of the village. And on this side of the village, the people knew how to plant and to dig and to cut the vine at the right time of the year. And so both sides of the village benefited from coming together and sharing what they had. And at the end of the day, they would sit on one side of the path, one side of the village, and the other side of the path, the other side of the village. And they would talk to each other. They would tell each other about their day, about the planting, about the pumping of the water. And their life was simple, and their life was happy. Until one day, a stranger walked straight through the village along that path without looking this way or without looking that way. And the people on both sides were very busy. On this side, in the water, on the side of the water, the pipes had broken and it had burst everywhere, and they were trying to stop the water spurting everywhere. And on this side of the village, some people were trying to get some fruit from the top of the tree, and one of the men fell down and broke his leg. So they were very busy. And just at that moment, the stranger walked through the village. But there was something special about this stranger, because he had a beautiful coat, except that one side of the coat was a beautiful green colour, and the other side of the coat was a beautiful red colour. And because the people were very busy with what they had to do, with the water bursting out and a broken leg, they only had time to look up and see one side of the coat and go back to their very important work. And the stranger continued walking. Now, at the end of the day, as usual, they came together on the side of the path, and they had a lot to talk about. They talked about the water bursting out and flooding everywhere on this side. And these people had this story about the poor man who'd broken his leg. But in the middle of it, they remembered they'd seen a stranger. They never saw strangers. And they saw that the stranger had a beautiful coat. And the people on this side said, "Oh, what a beautiful coat that stranger had. Did you see the stranger?" "Yes, we saw the stranger. And wasn't it a beautiful shade of green?" And the people on this side said, "We saw it, but it wasn't green. It was red." Now the people never argued. The people lived in peace. The people lived in harmony. But when the people here said, "No, it was red. You can't see because you have the sun in your eyes. It was red." The people said, "What? It was green." And they got so angry. They got so angry. They started to really shout at each other until a child fell over and hit his head. And when the father of the child saw that this little boy had hurt his head, he punched one of the other people. Well, when one person who is angry hits with his fist another person whose hand is there to bring life by growing flowers, by growing vegetables, and by making water come to help those people, that fist, that hand, can become a fist. And before long they were fighting. And before long, not just fists, but their spades. And they fought, and a war came about, and many people were killed. Until so many people had been killed, the people were crazed with the sorrow and the suffering. And as usual, at the end of all this death and destruction, they came to their path. And the people sat on one side, and the other people sat on the other side. And they looked ahead, but their eyes saw nothing because they'd seen too much war. Their eyes were glazed over. And they sat looking at each other, but not seeing. Until one day, the stranger came back. And of course, he walked the other direction. And because he walked the other direction, it seemed that something had changed. Because what the people had first seen, the people who had seen green, were now seeing red. And the people who'd seen red were now seeing green. And the question is, what did they do? Did they say, "I'm sorry, we were wrong"? Did they start fighting again and saying, "We saw green, we saw red"? What these people did, they realized that even though you see something with your own eyes, and even though you think that you have seen the truth, it's not enough. Because depending where you stand, you only see half of the story. And this story became very important in my life. It was important because I realized that every conflict starts with people thinking they know what is right, they know what they believe in, they know what the story is. But actually, there are two sides to every story. And we need to listen to the people with different opinions, the people who see things differently, the people who believe things differently. If we listen to them, maybe they will listen to us. And that story changed my life, because now all the stories I want to tell are about how people can stop arguing and stop fighting.